The golem story began in the mountains, full of volcanoes and nothing but emptiness. Not a single living soul in sight. Legends swirl about these mountains. They say a forester once wandered there, and when he returned, went completely mad. He talked about huge moving stones, magical mines, and other such nonsense. They also say that long ago a little boy got lost there, running off into the forest after a fight with his parents. When the locals set out to look for him, they immediately realized he'd gone to those very mountains and likely died. After all, it's all swampy and anyone unfamiliar with the area couldn't get through. The boy's parents didn't want to accept this, but the locals unanimously declared that if he went there, he was unlikely to survive. And indeed, the boy got stuck in the swamp and screamed loudly for help, even though he knew there was no one there to help him. Then, right beneath him, the ground shifted and lifted him out of the swamp. He was completely confused and afraid. The ground beneath his feet became hard, and he ran toward home. He was terrified. It felt like he was running at speed of light. The boy tripped over a log and fell. When he came to, he was already lying on his bed at home. Opening his eyes, he saw his mother, tears of happiness flowing. The boy was also happy to see his mother. When the boy became a grandfather, he went to those mountains again, but never returned. Those mountains were rich in gold and mines with magical elixir. From time to time, greedy young kings sent troops there to steal the gold, but no one ever returned. One day, tragedy struck near the mountains. The king died. He was the only honest and just king in those parts. Incidentally, he was the only one who fought against those who raided those very mountains, as it was very dangerous and there was no point in touching such anomalous places. After his death, his son took place. He also tried to prevent raids on the mountains, but when his father died, the other kings no longer saw any obstacles. All the kings began to attack these mountains for profit, but the king has already resigned himself and stopped fighting. The kings were doing well and were carrying gold from those mountains. A month later, at night, the king had a dream. His late father and late grandfather came to him. They said, "What are you doing? We were born to keep peace in those mountains." They also told him that the boy from the legend was his great-grandfather. They told him the truth about that place, that the stones there really do move. They're called golems, and that he must continue to protect that place at any cost. After all, golems mean no harm to humanity, but if humanity desecrates their lands, their home, they will begin to take revenge, and it will be hard on everyone. The king woke up in a cold sweat, sunlight streaming through the windows. He jumped out of bed and immediately sent messengers with a message to other kings to immediately stop plundering the mountains, as it was extremely dangerous for the lives of all humanity. But the king received nothing but laughter. Then he ordered his soldiers to stand at full combat readiness near the city's central gate. The king quickly donned his cloak and took the blade he had inherited from his father. He gave a motivational speech to his warriors and the entire horde. Barbarians, boar riders, archers, and other warriors, led by the king, rushed toward the mountains. Upon arrival, they were horrified. He had previously thought those places were very beautiful because his father had told him so, but all he saw were the stumps of felled trees, scorched grass, plumes of smoke, and so on. He climbed a small hill and began begging for the people's forgiveness, that they didn't know, that they weren't to blame, and so on. When suddenly, the hill began to move. The king was shocked. He could barely stand. When he saw that he was standing on the head of the very golem his late father and grandfather had told him about in his dream, he was horrified. The soldiers rushed to attack the golem, when suddenly, in one fell swoop, it slew everyone who came near. Then the king shouted, "Don't touch the golem!" And then the golem spoke.
"What have you done? You've awakened us from eternal slumber. We are here to protect these lands, and if I'm awake, then the others have awakened too. Only the mountains could awaken us, only in extreme cases, when these places are in danger or when someone has fallen into trouble in these parts.
The king told him everything as it was, that he too must protect these lands, and that you saved his great-grandfather from certain death here as a child. The golems suddenly began making strange sounds, and other golems began to converge on it. The king's troops began to prepare for battle, but the golems refused to attack them. Then suddenly, huge armies of other kings appeared with cannons and mortars and said, "Your grandfather prevented us from getting rich and plundering these mountains. You have had it like this for generations, and now you stand in our way of wealth. But this is the end. It won't be like this anymore. We have nothing to pay people for their work. We need this gold for the good of our people, and if you are the only obstacle, we will finish you, and these boulders will be of no avail." The king shouted, "Warriors, prepare for battle. We will fight to the end. Fight for peace in these lands, and we will win, for truth is on our side." The troops rushed into battle. At first, all was well, as the golems calmly dispatched all their enemies, until the cannons and mortars began firing. The golem the king stood on was seriously wounded and fell. As it turned out, he was the most powerful golem. The remaining golems went wild and began to break through the pain and dust, reaching their targets. An hour of carving later, all the king's cannons and mortars were destroyed. Only the king and some of the golems remained alive. Suddenly, the golems heard a cannon shot and immediately crawled toward it, but it fired before it could, and the shell landed directly on the king. The golem the king stood on told him that I was his great-grandfather. The king's skin crawled. The golem was on the brink of death. He said he came here in his old age to repay the debt he owed for saving his life. Then he entered a cave and fell asleep, but later woke up as a golem. The king burst into tears when the golem saw a cannonball flying toward him. With his last strength, he leaped toward the cannonball and deflected it. The cannonball flew with incredible speed and power. The golem fell apart, and two golemites emerged from it, revealing themselves to be his father and grandfather. The king wept, completely at a loss to understand what was happening. A week later, the king returned to his city with the golems. All the inhabitants were terrified. What kind of creature were these? The king gathered all the people in the center of the city and told them the whole secret of the mountains and the story of his great-grandfather. The residents accepted the golems, and the golems grew fond of the people of the city, helping them transport various items and protecting them. The golems spread throughout the world of Clash of Clans and Clash Royale and began participating in wars. This is how the golem was born.